Welcome to Best Picture This, where it is always Oscar season. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian. In this show, we reevaluate every Best Picture nominee from the 21st century and decide whether to keep it or kick it from its Oscar pedestal.
We bury the non-contenders, Brian. We wash them clean.
We do.
We won't let them live. We won't let them breathe. In 2003, the nominees for Best Picture were Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, Seabiscuit, Lost in Translation, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, and today's movie, Mystic River, directed by Clint Eastwood. Here's the trailer.
Hey, Divine, what you looking at?
The old neighborhood.
There are places that make us who we are.
Save!
I used to play on the street when I was a kid.
Really?
Moments that give us hope.
Do not make her laugh. Where have you been?
Feelings that make us question our beliefs. Fears that trigger our darkest emotions.
It's my daughter's car.
He said my daughter in there! He said my daughter in there! Oh, God!
For a couple seconds on Saturday, she looked at me like she was preparing to never see me again.
You don't think I'd have hurt her, do you?
She isn't hurt, Brendan. She's dead.
I loved her so much.
I'm gonna find him before the police do. I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna kill him.
You know what I was thinking about? Vampires. Maybe one day you wake up and you forget what it's like to be human. Maybe then it's okay.
You're not making any sense.
Sometimes I think all of this is just a dream, you know?
How about you tell us what really happened Saturday night, Mr. Boyle?
Bury us in shit.
Run! Run! Dave, run!
We wash them clean.
Mystic River, nominee for Best Picture. It was also nominated for Best Director, nominated for Best Supporting Actress, Marcia Gay Harden, who did a great job as Dave Boyle's wife. Best Adapted Screenplay, Brian Helgeland. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And it won 2 Oscars. Sean Penn, Best Actor, Tim Robbins, Best Supporting Actor. That was the first time that one movie had won both actor categories since Ben-Hur.
What?
1959.
Really?
Yeah. And it didn't happen again until Dallas Buyers Club in 2013, which again, well-deserved for those acting awards. Also, I thought it was interesting, the Boston Society of Film Critics, which, of course, they're going to say it's best film of the year, Boston Society of Film Critics.
They got accents.
They do. They're pretty good accents, I would say. Maybe not as good as Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, but it's pretty darn good. Yeah. But it also won for Best Ensemble. And I thought I think that's a really interesting category that some award ceremonies have. I wondered what you think. Should the Oscars adopt Best Ensemble?
Nah. There are enough
too many
categories.
Oscars?
Yeah, too many Oscars.
But sometimes I think the ensemble does make, if you said, what is the best ensemble movie of the year? And you looked at some of those winners, I bet you'd find some of the best movies. Because one great acting performance, yes. 4 or 5 of them, now we're talking, it doesn't matter what the movie's about. It's going to be a great movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's a different movie if it's like Sean Penn and 2 guys you don't know.
Yeah.
Or Sean Penn with Kevin Bacon and Tim Robbins.
These are great performances. Laura Linney is fantastic in this movie.
And I forgot that she was in this. Yeah. I was so happy to see her in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's really good.
She's great. And I think
Lawrence Fishburne is in it.
Lawrence Fishburne is good. Kevin Bacon is good in it. So anyway, the film earned, this was surprising to me too. It earned $157 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. Does this movie feel like a blockbuster to you?
I mean, no, but it is, I was thinking a little bit about it in the bedroom afterwards and kind of comparing.
Meaning the movie in the bedroom.
Yes.
Not physical location.
And this movie, it has more star power than that one. It's directed by Clint Eastwood. Those things kind of alone are enough to get it on, the mainstream marquees.
Yeah.
But also, it's a bigger melodrama than that one. So
that's true.
You have more of that, the music cues that are sort of telling you how to feel. You have more emotional scenes. There are more. I mean, there's one big emotional scene in the bedroom, but for the most part, it's kind of quiet. This movie is not exactly quiet.
No, I agree. Everything is played bigger and, feels like it's aiming for, try to pull that emotion out of you more.
Yeah.
I would say, does it risk sentimentality, this movie, do you think?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think so too. I mean, at the same time, I think that if you're daring big, you're probably going to sometimes be towing that line. Whether it succeeds or not, we'll find out in our Keep It and Kick It part of this show.
We will.
Coming up, we're going to do our Farley Awards for the most awesome moment of the movie. We'll do our golden takes. And then Just Mike will ask one question of Just Brian to get to the bottom of this movie or else. And then we'll do Imagine What Might Have Been. And we will talk trivia before we get to Keep It or Kick It.
But first, our Farley Awards for the most awesome moment of the movie. And I guess we have to ask ourselves, Brian, is the most memorable moment of the movie the same as the best moment?
I've thought about this because how many times when you're preparing for the show have you started with Farley because it's first thing on the list, and then you're like, I'm going to save that for my golden take. I do that all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, in this one, if you're going to talk most memorable, you got to say it's the Sean Penn, is that my daughter in there scene.
That wasn't what I picked, but that is a great scene.
I mean, it's the big iconic screaming scene.
Yeah.
It takes like 20 guys to hold him back. And, is that my daughter in it? That's something I say around the house without context often. It's like one of my go-to jokes to make my wife laugh. And she does. So we're a good pair, I think.
He apparently, that is a good sign of a good relationship when you can quote Sean Penn as a joke in this movie.
Yeah.
So he apparently requested oxygen tanks or an oxygen tank because he knew he was going to go get out of control, so that he would not have a headache or pass out after he screamed like that in the movie.
That's awesome. So that moment I like, and it's funny. I mean, we could both agree that's
funny.
That's a comedy moment, right? Well, when I do it, it is. But for my pick, I'm going to go with something much smaller. And just a quick reminder, I feel like I have to say this going in.
Cheat on Farley Awards.
I cheat on him on everything.
Okay, go ahead.
You got to get used to this. I just want to remind everyone that this is a spoiler show. And we have to just...
Apologies.
Put that up front. If you haven't seen Mystic River, probably pause the show, go watch it, and come back.
Go back to a movie that you've seen, like in the bedroom.
Yeah, and then come back to us. So at the beginning of the movie, Brian, we meet the three main characters as boys, and Dave, who's later played by Tim Robbins, gets abducted. So there's this scene that I kind of love. It's like sort of shot like a horror scene, but just in the dread elements of it. But there's a moment after he gets in the car where he's nervous. He knows something's not right, but he's just a kid doing what a grown-up told him. So it's this uneasiness there. And he looks out the back window as he's getting taken away. And just then the camera cuts from him looking to his friends in the middle of the street. And then the camera moves away with the car, and the kids kind of grow smaller as the car drives away. And that moment is mirrored at the end of the movie with Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon. And this is after Penn, here are the spoilers, basically admits to killing Tim Robbins, only to be told by Kevin Bacon that they found his daughter's real killer. So I love this idea in the opening scene when these kids are playing and they see the wet cement and they're writing their names in. And, Dave, Tim Robbins, he only gets the DA out. And we get the metaphor that he never got to be a full person because of this event. But in this moment, when the camera pulls away again, it's right after Penn says, the last time I saw Dave Boyle he was getting into that car, and he points, and then the camera cuts back to Kevin Bacon and Sean Penn in the middle of the road and pulls away. And as it's pulling away, now them as adults look small again in the street. And just as they were helpless as kids watching their friend get kidnapped, they're kind of just as helpless now to fate and circumstance and, the whims of the universe or whatever. And I just think it's like a very, very, very small moment that says a lot. And Eastwood does that a lot in this movie. I think you can point to a few different instances where you can say, oh, there's like this one tiny camera move that makes me think about this whole history of character.
Yeah,
And I love that.
I don't know who gets credit for that reversal there, whether it's Dennis Lehane, who wrote the novel, or Clint Eastwood, or Brian Helgeland, who adapted it. But I love how a movie can, when you look back on it, it's like, I would like to think of these reversals. So let's say before we see the end of the movie, and you got two young boys seeing their friend get driven off to be tortured. What's the opposite of that? Maybe one of them drives him off to kill him himself. And that is what happens. And now you look back and you think, that almost feels like too neat. Of course, that's the opposite of what that would be, but it totally works. And it feels even more chilling because it was the opposite. Like they became their worst nightmares. And this happens in movie after movie. That's what sometimes what makes the plot work well in any kind of movie.
Yeah, because you're referencing the scene where Tim Robbins now, as
he's
a grown-up,
being driven away
by Sean Penn's hoodlums, and he has that same shot where he looks out the back window and kind of moves away. So they do it twice in two different ways.
Yeah,
but I love the second time.
They
because
both work. But
you see Sean Penn already looking like haggard. He's been up all night. He's kind of tortured by this thing that he just did. And then for him to look small in that moment, it's like you go back to the cement. Dave never became a full person, and we kind of know, like, well, none of them did because of this event. Like, they're all sort of the same people that they were back on that street as the car pulled away, and changed their lives from that point on,
with a few murders thrown in between.
Yeah. They couldn't help it. They're victims of circumstance, Brian.
Right.
Your best moment.
My best moment is Laura Linney.
Okay.
This
final scene.
This moment just is so shocking when you realize that Laura Linney, his wife, Sean Penn's wife, knew all along that Sean Penn was going to go and commit murder to avenge his daughter. And when we find out that that is what happened, and I think I have a clip. I'm looking at Mark Gilliland, our illustrious producer, see if he has this, like 10 seconds of when I immediately think of Lady Macbeth, the total
puppet master element almost.
Yeah, right. But the sort of completely almost psychopathic, intensity, justification of, committing these crimes and murders. So let's hear Laura Linney, soothing her husband. Well, let me set it up a little bit, actually. So the scene begins where Sean Penn is in the bedroom and he's slumped on the edge of the bed. He has this large cross tattoo on his back, which I think is, interesting. And he's trying to reckon with the fact that he has not only lost his daughter, but now he's exacted revenge on the wrong person. So how could life get any worse? And he had just said to Dave Boyle, we bury our sins here, we wash them clean. But he doesn't feel so clean right here. I don't know what the washing clean. Apparently that's an ironic, line.
Oh, we'll get into that later on in the show.
He doesn't feel very clean. And then his wife, she's not ignorant of his sins. And in fact, she's like playing God, absolving him, praising him, calling him a king for doing what he just did. So let's go with the clip.
Because everyone is weak, Jimmy. Everyone but us. We'll never be weak. And you could rule this town.
Yeah, so she's making him a king.
Yeah.
She's talking him up out of his, depressive mood where, you don't know what he's going to do. She's like trying to build him up and say it's perfectly fine. So that character is quite a reversal, and I think it's completely convincing and
almost not only
twisted.
Not only just building him up to not feel bad about this isolated event, but almost leading him toward doing more things like that. She says, you could rule this town. Yeah. Basically saying like,
you're the Godfather now.
Yeah.
That's what she's kind of saying. I thought a lot about the Godfather, actually. The triumphant killing of the enemy, so to speak, as kind of the, what kind of ending is that? We'll get in. This is my golden take. Forget it. Forget I said anything.
A lot more things open up to you when you embrace doing things that you, when you pretty much say there's no line that I'm not willing to cross. All of a sudden, you can rule a town because there's nothing standing in your way like stupid morals, right?
Yeah, totally. What's your golden take, Mike?
All right, so Tim Roby, Daily Telegraph. He says in his review, his negative review of Mystic River.
Negative review?
Deeply serious, somber, long, and humorless. It reeks of integrity. Eastwood's best since Unforgiven? Maybe. But it's the one I'd least like to sit through. Again.
Mm-hmm.
So you said last week that your wife refuses to watch this movie again. She's seen it once and that's enough. And you yourself have said that you've second-guessed putting Monster on your top 5, even though you were a big fan of it because it's so dark and disturbing. But I think that the one adjective that Roby left out of his little blurb there that I read, and we talked about it before, is melodramatic.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is. It's grounded. It's in real life. It's not that heightened. But, I mean, the emotions, the tears, the high stakes, this thing is a melodrama, which I don't think that I was so aware of when I saw this. I looked back on my Letterboxd in 2006. That was when I saw it last.
That was when you're young, naive, less wise to the streets.
Exactly. But it's that element, that extra layer of theatricality, I guess, that softens the edges for me. Like, this doesn't feel like a documentary, this movie. And I think if it felt more...
Not like Seabiscuit.
Yeah. I mean, that's true to life. We'll
get to Seabiscuit in another episode.
But if it did feel more real, I think maybe I'd agree with that take. Because I've heard that before, like you think about a Requiem for a Dream. A lot of people will say that's a one-timer.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of cinema going on in that movie. And that separates it, I think, for me anyway, between like feeling bad about something feeling too real and kind of just being swayed by the artistry of a thing, which is separate from reality.
I thought a lot about genre with this movie.
Okay.
It's classified on the Wikipedia page as a neo-noir, which, according to director Larry Gross, a neo-noir is different from a classic noir, like from the, say, 40s.
Yeah.
Because it has more of a sociological than a psychological focus. And I was going to ask if you think that Mystic River has a sociological focus. I don't know that I see much of that exactly, but understanding the neo-noir, it's when you put a cop in the middle of a drama like this, and it's a procedural, and you're kind of like expecting certain things. It's now a genre film, and now all those kind of things that we kind of maybe get used to or we expect, they become, I think, a little bit less like disturbing because they're part of the typical cop drama that we've seen. That's where I think the neo-noir, again, for me, it did help to kind of dull a little bit of the, overly dark edges of it.
It's a stylistic separation, I think, for me. And I think about it with horror movies too. There's two different kinds of violence. Like there's violence that's clearly movie violence, like where the gore is a little bit over the top, the blood's a little bit too red. It's there to keep you at a sort of a safe distance. Michael Myers killing someone doesn't feel like someone in real life killing someone. And when you see other movies where they try to go more for that very realistic blood and guts thing, like a Hostel, that's kind of all about just torture. It's about like, we're going to make you cringe by watching these awful things. I don't respect that as much because I'm not feeling the dread through ideas. I'm feeling it through, viscera.
So you'd rather that the storytelling acknowledge that it's just a story rather than try to be hyper realistic?
No, I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel like this movie was dark, so I don't want to watch it again. For me, that feeling of being unsettled, I almost give credit to Clint Eastwood because he made me feel that way through ideas.
Yeah.
Because again, with like the horror movie thing, this movie is about violence, but it's not violent. Like if you really think about what we see on screen, there's not much. I mean, we don't see the childhood abduction. We see nothing of what happened to Dave.
I wasn't sure if that was edited out in my version, but I didn't think so.
It wasn't. We see nothing. We
just
don't
edited out I think there's a couple hundred F words that were edited out in my version.
Yeah. We don't see the daughter get killed.
Yeah.
We see her body. That's it. And it's not even really bloody.
Right.
And we do see Sean Penn kill Tim Robbins, but it's kind of in silhouette. There's no blood, and all it is just seeing his arm stab him
in the dark.
They're silhouettes basically.
And also, I thought it was a really strange and interesting choice to the gun. So Sean Penn points the gun at the camera to shoot Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
And then it's like this white starburst that comes out, almost like a little bit, to me, I felt like a borderline hokey melodramatic with that effect.
Do you think that the light is washing them clean? Or washing
Maybe
Tim Robbins clean?
Doing.
The death is kind of his release almost?
Could be.
But I don't know. I guess all I'm saying with all of this is I think that because of that separation, I see all of those negatives that I listed that, that the critic had as sort of part of the achievement of the movie, because they make you feel bad without really showing you much as a shortcut to those bad feelings.
I thought of this movie in the same terms that I think of with Shakespeare's tragedies, because those tragedies are not so dark and disturbing that I don't want to watch them again. I this time around, I admired the characters. That's what makes the Shakespeare tragedies so incredible. You could study them as a psychologist as well as a literature, person, or just as a, story fan, because these characters make such interesting choices. The motivations are so fascinating, and they make, whether they're good or bad choices, you can sort of understand some of what's motivating them. And in the end, like, whether they're good choices or bad, you feel like you understand humanity in some way differently than when you started the movie. So I think this is, I mean, I'm not saying it's like, as good as King Lear or something, but I did think of King Lear. I was thinking, like, why does that darkness of King Lear and like these horrible things that happen in Shakespeare, why do I find myself drawn to go and study those still? Because I do. Like, I've been reading King Lear this week, for the how manyth time.
Yeah.
And I felt that, I kind of felt that way thinking of through Sean Penn's character.
And that's, excuse me, that's where your sociology comes in. And I do see this as sort of a sociological.
So what's the sociological element that you saw?
We'll get more into this in questions, because I kind of want to dive into a lot of that, and I don't want to steamroll the golden take yet.
Yeah.
But I guess the movie is about violence as a gateway into thinking about, the repercussions of violence and all that kind of stuff, the motivations of the characters. It's not about, violence in order to make you feel bad. It kind of avoids those scenes, I think.
It's not a gross out violence for
not
sure.
at all.
In fact, Clint Eastwood is famously like against violence, like he's against war and, these other things. He has there's a lot of violent kind of themes in movies that he's done, but it's interesting to know, like, well, that's his personal, feeling about it. So my golden take is kind of short, but I have like a sort of quasi game I wanted to propose here.
Nice.
So to me, one of the great achievements of this movie is that the ending is both tragic and triumphant at the same time. Laura Linney is the key that makes it both. But then you get into they're going to parade, which again, I thought of Godfather 2 kind of, with De Niro walking through the parade. And, but like Kevin Bacon knows what happened and is not chasing him down. Another murder that people get away with, which we love on this show.
Yeah.
So many movies where you get away with murder. Gosford Park in the bedroom. There's many that they get away with murder. But I thought that it's such that makes the movie complicated in the ending. And I thought, usually you think of movies as like there's a closed ending and an open ending. But I think that we should also have this new terminology as we talk about movies. Is the ending complicated or simple? Simple is not a bad thing in a movie ending, in my opinion. So here are
sometimes
5,
depending on the movie. Yeah.
If it's anyway, I'll show an example.
Okay.
So I want to know what you think of these movies that we've done recently, whether the ending is closed or open.
Okay.
And then also whether it's complex or simple.
Okay.
So Bridge on the River Kwai. It ends with...
It's complex.
It's complex. I agree. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is to see if we agreed on this, because I think some of these seemed clear and some didn't, but I felt also that it's a complex ending because it's like, is it madness? Right? That's the ending of Bridge on the River Kwai. Who's mad? It's kind of like war is mad, but also, there's a lot of reasons that you could understand madness.
Yeah.
I think it's complex. Is it closed or open?
Closed.
It's closed. I agree. So Bridge on the River Kwai, they blow up the bridge. That's it. How about Master and Commander? Is it open or closed?
Closed.
I thought open because they're about to go off on another adventure to go and try to chase down the captain.
I guess so, but it's sort of about the fact that he needs to have a target, right?
Yeah.
Without that, he's not a master or a commander.
This is an interesting, wow, we got thunder in the background. That's exciting. That's a good sound effect. We'll just pretend that's a sound effect for the show. We haven't done the Hurt Locker yet, but this is one of the most fascinating endings of any movie that I've seen, I think.
I don't remember.
We'll have to talk about that another time. I kind of saw Master and Commander as open because they're about to go, but it's that one because is it simple or complex, the ending?
Simple.
I think simple also. So I've kind of thought open and simple. You say closed and simple. I think that one's kind of borderline, but maybe simple I think tends toward also closed endings. But maybe there's some difference there. Okay, how about Drowning Mona? That was one of the most recent ones we've done.
If you want to think of that in real academic terms, then complex ending.
As if the plot mattered at all for any of Drowning Mona. But
I guess I would say closed and complex.
I agree.
Yeah.
School of Rock.
Simple and closed.
I agree. Lost in Translation.
Open and complex.
Why do you say open on Lost in Translation?
Because you don't know what their life is going to be after this.
But you said in the episode that they're not going to get together again, which is why I thought
But that's completely my theory, and that text is not in the movie at all.
It's true. Well, anyway, I think it's interesting to have this kind of terminology about it, but what about Mystic River?
Completely open. Well, I mean, if you think of it in terms of the procedural, it's closed, but it's open and it's complex. And it's incredibly complex.
It's incredibly complex. I tended toward closed, but I could understand where you're coming from. To me, closed because of Kevin Bacon's character, the fact that he's not chasing down Sean Penn, it kind of makes it a closed narrative, essentially. But it's certainly complex. And complex endings are not necessarily better than simple, but they often, I think, lend you to stick with you. They might stick with you more, and they might make you think about it 3, 4, 5 days later more than a simple ending would. This one is a tremendously complex and incredible ending.
Yeah. You're leading right into my question.
Please do.
This is perfect because
Go
you
right
couldn't
ahead.
even argue that, yes, this is complex, but maybe contradictory. Trying to have its cake and eat it too a little bit. So it's time for the morality hour.
All right.
Starring Brian and
We should have a ding, ding, ding like theme of morality hour.
It really does.
That should be part of the show.
This is our brand. Let's just face it. We're the morality movie show. Good title. Morality
movie show.
All right.
Everyone will be watching
We'll
that.
change that for next week. So my question is simple. The conversation will not be simple. It will be open. Can you bury your sins, Brian? Can you wash them clean? Is the movie saying that is possible?
I don't think it's saying that, and it certainly does not align with my own moral view. I mean, revenge is intoxicating. It becomes a motivation for a lot of tragic characters, but it's a tragedy when someone carries through their revenge. It is hard to get vengeance, justice. It is even harder to forgive. And that's the only solution for Sean Penn's future happiness in life is to forgive and move on. Because where is he going to go from here? He just killed the wrong person, and that person has a son. I mean, it's multi-generational why he got into this mess in the first place with Just Ray. And now he's going to leave his son. Is he going to feel pressure to kill Tim Robbins' son? Because Tim Robbins is going to grow up to be a man and try to kill him. This is what Road to Perdition was kind of about as well. Like you have to, there's no end to the vengeance.
One thing always leads to a second thing, and at some point, the only way it ends is for someone to say enough. And
yes, has to forgive. The Godfather. The ending of Godfather 1 is you have to wipe out everybody.
Yeah.
That's tragic and horrible.
Mm-hmm. But at some point, someone else will rise. So it's not like if you just kill everyone, then your problems are done because now you're on the top of the hill forever.
Al Pacino is not happy-go-lucky now after killing all his competitors.
So I think that it avoids answering this question, whether it's possible to wash away your sins. And I think it kind of... I have mixed feelings about what I think about that. So let's try to work through it.
All right.
Have you seen Match Point? Woody Allen's Match Point.
It's been a long time. Scarlett Johansson, right?
Yes. So that movie sort of argues, I think, that we all make our own moral universes. So like, if you kill someone and the cops don't catch you, if you can live with yourself having done that, then you've won. It takes faith totally out of the equation. But this movie, faith is a huge part of it, right? So it starts with Sean Penn bringing his daughter to her first communion. Like you said, he has a giant crucifix tattooed on his back. Mm-hmm. The concept of God is present in this story. Mm-hmm. So we need to think of it in those terms because that's the way that we know, the screenwriter and Eastwood are thinking about it.
Yep.
We're told repeatedly that the past leaves a mark. Lawrence Fishburne says you can always tell a guy's been to prison. He holds it in his shoulders.
That is a great line.
Grief, it's in their stomach.
Prison, that's his shoulders.
Yeah, it's great. It's good stuff. And they talk several times about, what would have happened? How would our lives be different if I was the one who got in that car instead of you? Mm-hmm. So the movie is insistent that...
They're talking about fate there, partly.
And that what happens in the past, you can't erase. It's there. So in that way, there's no escaping it. But think about Kevin Bacon's whole journey with his wife. Mm-hmm. His wife calls him intermittently throughout the whole movie. And I know it's not really my favorite part of the story.
That's kind of the most melodramatic part of it. And it feels most like a nod to like 1940s, like you see, the lipstick down kind of thing.
Just the lips down. Yeah. And she calls, she doesn't say anything. And he just talks, tries to get her to, have small talk with him. He talks about his day, just waiting for her to say something and to come back. And the way that he fixes this whole thing is at the end, he apologizes to her.
Yeah.
The second he apologizes to her, she snaps out of it. She talks. And I think it's interesting, too, with the whole seeing her just from the lips down. Yep. It kind of reminds you of, like, giving confession.
Yeah.
If you're talking to the priest, you might only see him through a partition.
Nice observation, yes.
So he faces his sins, and then he gets his family back. So that does absolve him, right?
But
what?
Then... he doesn't do his job. Mm-hmm. He knows someone committed murder and he looks the other way. He's a liability, just like Lawrence Fishburne accused him of earlier in the movie.
Yeah. But this is my point, I think, is that it goes both ways on us because it goes back to back. It goes from him talking to Sean Penn in the street and it being clear that he's not going to arrest him to as he's walking away from that conversation, Sean Penn's walking down the street. His wife calls again.
The reward, the blessing.
He apologizes to her, and then he gets his family back. So,
Marcia Gay Harden plays Dave Boyle's wife. She does the right thing by say something, see something, say something, right?
But does she? Because she does the right thing in that she
should have gone to the cops.
Yes, she goes to him instead. To the guy that she knows is a little shady.
What is her reward for doing what she thinks is the brave, right thing to do? Her husband gets murdered. Mm-hmm. What does Laura Linney, her character, the Lady Macbeth to, Jimmy Markham's character, Sean Penn's character, she thinks she's doing the right thing probably by getting her husband back. She has lost her husband because he just went and committed a murder. He's back to his old murderous ways. And now she thinks that she's like building him up to be a king. So did she win? Did she do the right thing?
But you're assuming that she didn't know about the first murder?
No, I don't know about that.
I sort of assumed that she backed him on that also.
Could be.
And now it's like, now's your time to really embrace
really be
this
the
thing.
king.
But I think it gives us the two answers. And in a way that kind of feels like a cop-out to me, saying if we face our sins and we apologize for the mistakes we made in the past, like Kevin Bacon did, then that's the path forward. But then he also says, the same character who got rewarded for that is now an accomplice in this murder, and he's enjoying the parade just like Sean Penn is. He gives him the little finger guns at the end.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That move haunted me for the rest of the night. I was thinking about it. So that's the thing. Even though I feel like it is a little bit of a cop out, it's the thing that made me think about what this movie is trying to say for hours afterwards, and that makes it a positive.
Yeah,
right?
it makes it interesting. It's commentary about humanity.
Or is it
Does it fall flat?
Yeah, or is it avoiding answering the question? Is it just posing it, but then kind of making it complicated?
Are you saying that you wish there was a clear moral lesson in this movie?
No, I don't. But I do see two very clear sort of lessons that are diametrically opposed to one another.
I don't think that Eastwood is trying to teach the lesson that Kevin Bacon... I mean, you can make some right decisions and get some reward from it. I think that it's kind of like most people are not, always making the right decisions. They're making, they're acting, they're doing what they think is the best decision at the time, which sometimes is a very bad one. But life is complicated, and a lot of everybody there is carrying something dark with them. And they're trying to enjoy the parade at the same time. And that's what life is like for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I don't think that Eastwood's trying to teach us a lesson here, which is a strength of the movie. If it ended and I felt like, oh, okay, this is what the message of the movie is, then it would feel like
you'd be whining and complaining on this show right now.
Like an after-school special. I would be, probably. I think it's more sort of just about those ripples that violence, what happens after the act, rather than how society deals with it. I don't think it's so concerned with justice as much as it is repercussions.
Yeah. So my question we've kind of mostly talked about, but I'll just instead I will share this little tidbit in the book, which I have not read, but apparently the book does not ever indicate that the Dave Boyle's abductors were priests. In the movie, they show that he's got this priestly ring on in the back of the car. That was added in the movie. Mm-hmm. And this suggestion was that it was added because this took place during when the priest sex abuse scandal was kind of uncovered in Boston. That made me kind of wonder if they were trying to have a bit of a sociological focus by, implicating that maybe religion is not the answer to these problems because it has also caused some of these problems. I don't know, but that was the one thing I thought of with the whole if this is following those neo-noir kind of rules of sociological versus psychological. I think mostly though it's psychological focus.
And it's just another contrast, that the tattoos on Sean Penn's back does not mean that he's following any sort of principles.
Yeah.
Why is he getting his daughter? Why is he bringing her to her first communion?
I think because there's tradition and there's peace and order in his life because of that.
Peace and order in his life. So you think
he
found the church after that first murder?
I don't know. All I'm saying is that the communion, that is partly societal. It's partly tradition. That's what that's what his family is expecting, and it's a great occasion. And it does. I think that ceremony creates a sense of order in his life. It's totally thrown out the window because he then immediately goes and finds his daughter dead. But that's what the religion is doing for him.
I think it's all just, these are the lies we tell ourselves in order to feel like we're good people.
But yet, I would counter that the one truth that would solve their problems would be that you have to find a way to forgive, which is, what most religions will tell you. So maybe they need to listen more carefully in church. That would solve Sean Penn's problems.
I don't know. I guess so. But then the fact that the guy, one of the abductors, is from the church kind of
clearly
negates that theory, right?
Clearly not.
Because he's telling himself his own set of lies, probably.
Well, he is probably not living up to his priestly oaths.
And you think about Laura Linney also. It's not that you're a murderer. It's that you're strong. Everybody else is weak except for us. Mm-hmm. And these are all just ways to rationalize.
It's completely worldly. She is playing God. She's saying, we have no use for God because right now, this is the immediacy of the situation is prop up my husband, see a future. And the future for her, it can't be, you need to go to jail. That's not what she's going to tell him.
Yeah.
So, but Is that gonna are they on the path to peace and happiness in their life? No. This is not a happy family, and it never will be a happy family because they haven't learned anything from all this.
But is Kevin Bacon?
Kevin Bacon is going to be haunted by this too. It's going to come back to bite him.
Why do you think that?
Because you don't get away with murder in real life.
But what is the movie telling us that makes you think that he is going to feel guilty about this?
Just because of the surrounding, what's going. I think the parade and the lightness of the attitude is ironic. I mean, the reason that there's a parade in the movie, because they could have done anything, right? They could have been in another wake. It could have been in a thunderstorm. They chose a parade. I think it's because it's the opposite of what's going on internally in these characters' lives. So I think that we're supposed to see that, and we're supposed to be like, Kevin Bacon thinks he's happy, but he's not. And Marcia Gay Harden is walking over here crying and lost because her husband's dead, and
she's a victim of those ripples that I was mentioning before. Just like the three characters that we follow are a victim of the ripples of that abduction
of the mystic
of violence in one form or another. But Kevin Bacon, I think I'm a little more cynical about this than you are. I think he's going to be just fine. I think that he made his choice. This is a guy from the old neighborhood. There's a lot of talk about the old neighborhood here, and gentrification comes up at one point, where they talk about we need a good crime wave in the city to drive these yuppies out. Lawrence Fishburne talks about the coffee is it's 15 times more than a Dunkin' Donuts. Like there's this idea that things are changing, and then we have that kind of makes us think about how much really does change over time.
Would you watch Mystic River 2?
2? I guess if Clint Eastwood wants
you guess
to make, I don't know.
Would you watch The Godfather 2?
I mean, I would watch anything, but I don't know what this would be about.
I think that seeing it's just so complex that these characters, their lives are not resolved. So, I mean, to me, I just thought a lot about The Godfather in watching this and the kind of the tone. I need to go back and rewatch The Godfather. Maybe it would go down in my list again.
I think that the more selfish that you can be, the more you can effectively bury the things that make you uncomfortable. And I think that is what Sean Penn and Laura Linney are doing. I think that is what Kevin Bacon is doing. And they don't care that Tim Robbins' wife now is a single mom, is running down the street in the parade, desperately trying to get her son's attention, and he seems aloof. Lives are ruined, but if you could put your blinders on and say, those people are weak, they don't deserve to be happy like we do, then you can rationalize yourself to live to a certain standard of happiness.
What I'm saying is that you cannot truly put your blinders on in that way in the world.
You think so?
You just can't really do that.
So you think every criminal is unhappy?
Now, there are some criminals that have, I think that we are born with an innate sense of what's good and what's bad. However, there are some totally, off the chart people who are psychopaths and maybe, don't have the same kind of, moral compass possibility. But I don't think that's these characters. I think these people, no, Sean Penn is racked with internal torment when he's sitting on that bed. Mm-hmm. Laura Linney pulls him out of it in some way, by basically dragging him down to hell with her, essentially. But he then feels equipped to go down to the parade as a result. But that's not solving his problem.
But what do you think after his first murder? That was years and years ago. He seems fine.
And he was tense in his shoulders for the rest of his life, according to Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, I guess. I think that we just see it differently because living with baggage, I think, is a lot different than being racked with guilt all of the time. And yes, he has baggage, and he's never going to be able to escape that mindset of, I was in prison and I killed a guy. But you reorient yourself, and now he's got this daughter that he loves, and they have that one scene that's a little too lovey-dovey at the beginning to really set up the fact that these people really love each other, so that when she gets killed, we feel it a little bit more. But he's got 2 other daughters on top of her, and he's got this wife who's incredibly supportive, and that's a life, man. I think if you can get past all that. I don't know.
More power to you.
More power to you.
Might as well kill a few more people while you're at it.
If you can live with it,
All right, let's go to what might have been, shall we?
Okay, let's do it.
Michael Keaton as Sean Devine. He was actually on set he was getting ready to film. He had a big argument with Clint Eastwood, and he was dropped.
Wow, I could see it.
I could too. Michael Keaton's great. Forrest Whitaker as Whitey Powers, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, he's good in everything.
He's fantastic.
Too. Yeah,
I love Panic Room. He was great in Panic Room. Okay, so then I have a few Clint Eastwood. What Clint Eastwood could have played in these movies from the past. Superman, 1978.
As Superman, Clark Kent. Wow. Ooh, man. I don't think so, but maybe like a noir Superman. Make it more like Batman
Maybe
Begins.
like a Western Superman. He was offered the role of James Bond in Live and Let Die. He said it needed to be an English actor.
Interesting.
An American James Bond?
I mean, I guess. I mean, in the 70s, he had some swagger to him.
Yeah. Clint Eastwood as Rambo, First Blood.
I think you need the
bigger muscles.
Yeah.
Okay, so Clint Eastwood was Dirty Harry. Frank Sinatra was originally going to be Dirty Harry. Interesting. Clint Eastwood was offered the role of K in Men in Black and turned it down.
I like that. I actually like it. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones is good, but...
He's like a taller Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, and he's another cranky old guy. Like, if you throw any cranky old guy in that role...
Next to Will Smith, he'll be great.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, trivia. Laura Linney is the only major cast member who does not cuss in this movie. That's why she's our favorite character.
Cuss.
Right, Mike?
So you say cuss. I say,
well, no, that's what the trivia was.
Okay.
Swear, curse.
That's why she's our favorite character.
That's why she's our favorite character.
Because she doesn't say any bad words.
She only just plays God and tries to get...
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first movie where Clint Eastwood was credited as composer of the score. He's also he's quite a good pianist.
He does that a lot, yeah.
He also did like scenes in the bar in The Line of Fire in 1993. So in the 1950s, he got his first start in movies by having uncredited bit parts in B films, including Tarantula in 1955. And so he supported himself by digging swimming pools and driving a garbage truck.
I like that.
You got to love that.
Yeah,
That's almost as good as dropping out of high school.
I think Harrison Ford had a similar story. He was working on construction sites or something and was discovered.
The boots.
The boots?
That Clint Eastwood wore in Unforgiven.
Oh, okay.
1992 were the same boots that he wore in Rawhide 1959 on
cool.
TV. That's pretty cool. So get this one. I don't know if I believe this. Clint Eastwood was listening to audio of Marilyn Monroe, and he thought, she has such a sexy, breathy voice that he decided he would try to do a male version of that. And that's kind of where he got his sort of breathy voice. Do you buy that? I don't know. We should do a Marilyn Monroe marathon.
I don't know. I'm not sure that's going to work for me, Brian.
All right. Keep it or kick it.
Before we go into this, I just want to ask you one more question because I thought about this and I can't figure out my theory about it, but it's throughout the movie and especially toward the end, we get people willing other people to speak. This is a common thing that happens throughout the movie. So Sean Penn keeps telling Tim Robbins, just admit you do it and I'll let you live. Just admit you did it. Mm-hmm. The brother of the killer, who's mute, toward the end.
It's a nice cut back and forth at the end.
Yeah, it's good. Mm-hmm. But he keeps telling him, tell me you love me. And he can't speak. He just keeps repeating that. And Kevin Bacon has the wife who doesn't talk to him and keeps trying to get her to speak. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that? Is there anything there, or is that just a correlation? Because I was trying to think through it, and I don't have a theory about what that says.
Well,
about the other themes that we were talking about.
One of them was a forced confession.
Mm-hmm.
One of them maybe is kind of a distorted miracle, having the dumb speak.
Distorted miracle.
A twisted miracle of Christ becomes the...
But you're trying to get people... You want them to tell you what you want to hear. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It's what you want to hear. And it's the same thing with his wife. Who knows if this relationship is going to last, but the idea is he just wants her to talk, even though she left and she's apparently putting in no effort to try to fix whatever they have.
Yeah, I was like, why are you still after this lady? Go meet somebody else.
Move on, man. That nice cop was talking to you. She wants to go on a date. Like, what's the problem here? But I don't know. I don't know if there's anything there, but it's just something that I thought about, and I kind of just hit a dead end with it.
Marcia Gay Harden also comes to tell Sean Penn about Dave Boyle's, role, and she just sits there and he goes, "Come on, you can tell me." So there's probably
pulling
more.
words out of
Maybe,
people.
yeah.
There's something there. But yeah, I'm keeping it. I think this was one of the easier ones that we've done so far. I mean, all of that sort of moral complexity, like what is this movie trying to say, or is it saying nothing, and that's what's kind of tying me in knots. I think that is there, but at the end of the day, my brain was going for
me too
for a while. So, and I think that's sort of a credit to the craft. So it's on my 5.
I will also keep it. I thought about it quite a bit because I don't know. I want there to be a more uplifting, more simple ending movie on my list.
More uplifting.
But when I thought about it, more of like it's a tragedy. It's a neo-noir. It's about these characters. It's just so compelling. It's so memorable. It's strange and unusual in that way. So I think it's a great achievement as a movie.
And we have to wrap up, but what's the value in being uplifting?
When you leave the theater and you're more likely to be nice to people, that's kind of a good thing for the world to have, is more movies that help people to be nice. I don't want people to walk out of this theater and be like, you know what, maybe I could kill somebody too. That's not really going to happen.
No, but
you know what I mean?
I think that it does get you critically thinking about bigger issues, which I think in a way does make you a more thoughtful, better person.
And tragedy leads people to, hug your family a little tighter, right? You see the story of someone losing their 19-year-old daughter. Maybe you do appreciate your family better, and that's something that is good that comes out of tragedy often. So experiencing this tragedy through a movie for a couple hours in a movie theater, or on your ClearPlay DVD at home, then that's a pretty safe way to experience a tragedy, and that's one of the high purposes of art, I think. So in our next episode, we'll talk about Seabiscuit, or as my 3-year-old son calls it, Shoe Basket, starring Tobey Maguire, Jeff Bridges, and Chris Cooper. It's the true inspirational story of a famous racehorse.
Would you say this is the absolute apex of Tobey Maguire's career? Because he'd already done Spider-Man. Now he's in Seabiscuit. He's going to do Spider-Man 2 the following year.
You mean as far as his fame, and he's
I mean, the Cider House Rules was a few years back.
Yep.
I mean, he's not only in Spider-Man,
He's
which was the
big time.
biggest movie ever at the time. He's in these Oscar movies.
He got a lot of money for Seabiscuit too.
I bet.
I forget the number. I'll confirm that in the next episode. But yeah.
So we want to hear from you. Have you seen Seabiscuit? How does it work for you?
Do you love it as much as Mike
Do you
does?
love it? I just want to spoil. I don't hate the movie, Brian. I'm just going to throw that out right now. But let us know what you think about Tobey Maguire's career and about horses, and we'll read your answers on the show. You can find us at bestpicturethis.com, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or by telling your smart speaker to play Best Picture This. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Best Picture This. And for 15 years of golden takes, head over to Letterboxd, where you'll find me, Mike Cavalieri.
Do you have a favorite movie from the past that doesn't get the attention it deserves? If you become a patron of this show by visiting patreon.com/bestpicturethis, you can help choose a movie for one of our bonus episodes. We have done The Fly, Garden State, Bridge on the River Kwai, Drowning Mona. Coming up, Pleasantville, chosen by Chris, Matt, Joey, Spencer, and Maddie, respectively.
Looking forward to Pleasantville. Thanks to WNZF and Mark Gilliland for producing. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you get your pods.
Until next time, remember, at Best Picture This, we're still wearing our boots from Rawhide, too.